Welcome back, YouTube. Hey everybody, what's up? It's me here, Morley Critical. Today we're going to be talking about the old gods in Fear and Hunger, an extensive analysis by Mr. Hugo. Who came first, the stinky humans or the poo-poo butt older gods? Okay, I could do that the whole time, but I don't think anybody would like that, so we're not going to do that the whole time. Depths influenced in Termina. Didn't his traces die? Weren't they used for Gotha's Ascension? Okay, so the issue here is that we don't exactly know what the the old god situation is. Crazy. The Depths traces has appeared, even though it should be dead. There seems to be multiple traces of Grogoroth in the. Am I covering that? Hang on, I'm covering that. Let me scooch this over a little bit and maybe just, can I like zoom out in here? 90% there? Oh, that's kind of shit, isn't it? Can I like do like 95? 100? 125? That'll do. Death of an older god. What does that mean? Why does Vinushka still have influence in Termina if this is true? So yeah, the question is, what is a trace? How can a god die? What does that even mean that a god dies, right? And these are legitimate questions that we still have unclear answers about. It'll probably be addressed here, but see, who came first, the humans or the older gods? Are their physical forms shaped in our own image? So who came first? I think we have an answer to, but I won't talk about it just yet because this will probably answer it, right? Okay, next page. Are the older gods' physical forms shaped according to our image? The older gods' true forms are conceptual, like Grogoroth's true form is literally destruction. Yes, that is the easy thing to answer, since Grogoroth literally tells us in its ending B he's a primary source, but what is up with their physical forms traces? Yeah, so, you've got Grogoroth. It's like, yes, he's the god of destruction. He is literally destruction. Sylvian is literally love. So what does that mean? Like, how can we go and hit him with a sword if he is literally destruction? Like, what does that even... Like, that doesn't make any sense, does it, right? Not too sold on Nash'hrah's stand being a trace of Grogoroth. Love to hear your opinion. I have a different... Should I say my... Oh, we'll get to it when I get there. I feel like multiple traces of an old god makes sense because it's how when a meteor descends to Earth, it sometimes breaks into smaller chunks. That's a really interesting way of looking at it, to be honest. Especially since the older gods are said to have come from space, but they'll probably talk about this. Here's a really interesting tweet from Miro. I've been trying to drive the point that all the lore you read about the gods in the game are human-written knowledge. Whether they're accurate or not is another question. So how much the gods interact with living beings, or what even classifies as a god, are all left somewhat open. Yes, so it's worth remembering that everything in the games is written from a person's perspective, from someone's perspective, right? Sometimes we know who that is, sometimes we don't. But the way it works is that you have to assume that it's true until you find out something that proves that it isn't, right? And even then, that is pretty rare that something gets explicitly proven wrong. Probably the biggest thing is the Fellowship saying that they went and killed the old gods and took over Mahab, right? That's explicitly not true, and we have ample evidence to prove that they didn't do that. But other things, like, like All-mer is a divine, he's an ascended god, right? All-mer. Is that true? Well, people keep saying it's true, and we haven't seen anybody say that it isn't. So it's like, well, he's probably an ascended god, similar to the god of Fear and Hunger, right? That probably happened, right? And when you start questioning those things that the game itself doesn't question, then, you've got no basis to stand on whatsoever when you're doing any sort of lore stuff, right? Even when it's things like Hugo, how he wrote the God Manifesto, that was like, yeah, gods can't die, but everybody else is like, no, Vinushka's... But then there's the... Enki is like, yeah, Vinushka's dead. It's like, well, that's a bit of a mess, but then when you look at their arguments exactly and what they're actually saying, they're not contradictory. They think they are, but they aren't. And that's often the case is when some new information gets revealed, it doesn't contradict old things, it adds to it, is what happens most of the time. So it's actually very rare in the games that you get something that explicitly contradicts previous evidence. It's actually very rare. Father Freako followed us on the second page. Oh, you're going to be seeing him a lot, don't worry. I'm just going to cheat and use God mode so I can lore max and read all the in-game info. Just can't comment intelligently on the game board at this point. Yeah. Look, it's a very, very complex situation. And honestly, you do have to spend a lot of time just reading, asking questions, following threads, whatever, you know. A really good way to start is there's a guy who does YouTube videos. His name is... oh no, he just changed his name. It's Mythonics, I think. He does good videos about the lore of Fear and Hunger. So you can use that to get a good basis on it. He's alright, you know, there's better, you know, but I think he's got a good introduction to it. But what I do, so how I do it, right? I know I'm probably objectively one of the people who knows the most about the lore in the world, right? Just because I just spend so much time on it, right? And I wouldn't be the person who knows the most about the lore, that's for sure. Even discounting Mirror, there's probably people in the Discord that know more than I do. But the way it works for me is that I'll just like look at stuff in game, and I'll just ask a question, right? And I try to ask questions that nobody's asked before, or I haven't seen anybody ask before, right? So like with Bethel, right? I was having a conversation with Wormgirl, and Wormgirl says, yeah, he kind of looks like he was pregnant. Like his missing belly looks like he was pregnant. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that made me think about Bethel. And I was like, okay, so why does he look like that? Why does he look weird? Is one question. Let me pull him up. Let me just pull him up real quick. Fear and Hunger Bethel. Or Betel. I like calling him Bethel because it goes back to his Christian roots. Yep. We're gonna pull that bad boy up. You can load it. You can do it. Okay. So is this gonna... Yes. So Bethel, right? Can we actually zoom in on this? So Bethel, right? This is a statue of him we find in the first game outside the libraries of Mahab. And the question is, okay, why does he look like that? And then, so you pull that thread. Okay, what does he look like? Well, it looks like his skin is all merged together and he's got really deep wrinkles on his face. Oh, that kind of looks like a marriage. Is Bethel a marriage? Maybe. And look, you can even see like the lines coming down here as well, which marriages tend to do. And then you ask, okay, well, if he's pregnant, what would that mean for the marriage? Did he perform a marriage with a woman and then get pregnant? Okay, that's interesting. We'll just note that down and we'll write that down in our theories, and then we'll, maybe we'll find more information about that. Maybe we won't, right? And then, we kind of do. Yes, the name Bethel has Christian roots. Bethel was a stone that one of the early prophets found, and it was a place where God came down to meet the people. So it was a sacred site, and it was spelled Bethel. So, hey, Cogsmith, good to see you again. Yeah, you're in a different world this time. And so then we go, okay, so what else do we know about Bethel then, right? So we've got this interesting theory, right? Can we prove it? Can we not prove it? Well, let's look at other things about Bethel, right? What is his most famous trinket, right? It's called the Beetle Stone, right? Or Bethel Stone, Beetle Stone. And in the first game, that's what it's called in the second game. In the first game, what's it called? It's called the Sorcerer's Stone, which is one of the names for the alchemist, the alchemist stone, right? And what was one of the core concepts in alchemy was the red king and white queen, or white king and red queen, merging together to create a theoretical perfect human. Oh, that's a really interesting idea, because marriage is basically an alchemical union, and that was made to, and the original idea of that is making a perfect human. Thank you so much, Cogsmith. Wow, 10. Oh, it's awesome. Wow, you didn't have to do that, but thank you very much, Cogsmith. I really appreciate that. It's good to be back. Glad to have such a loving fan base. Yes, I finally live again. I'm just gonna have a sip. Exactly, Vitruvia, a rebus, right? So that's really interesting. This guy that looks like a marriage is an alchemist, and one of the core concepts in alchemy is a rebus, right? A marriage between a theoretical marriage between merger between a man and a woman, right? To create a perfect human. And then we go, okay, well, that's really interesting. Do we know any perfect humans in the lore? In fact, we do. There's only one, isn't there? And that's All-mer. Okay, so Bethel, the first known new god that... So there's a strange link here between Bethel and All-mer, right? So can we find out any more about this link between Bethel and All-mer? Well, actually, yes, we can. Because we don't know who All-mer's father was. We know it was a new god father and a human mother, which is explicitly different from the girl, which had a new god mother and a human father. So we know for a fact that All-mer had a divine or a false god father, and the false gods, of course, are the new gods. So that's looking a lot more like Bethel might actually be All-mer's father, right? That's an odd link. Is there any more to bolster that up, right? Thank you again, Cogsmith. Really appreciate it. Speaking, it hasn't been the same with that. Yes, I've been chomping at the bit to come back, so I'm glad to come back. So is there any more? And yeah, and yeah, exactly. There's like alchemy labs all over the place, right? And so is there any more that links Bethel and All-mer? Well, actually, yes, there is. Bethel explicitly built the libraries of Mahab to collect the knowledge of the old gods, right? And so the timeline is, right, so we had Bethel, and then we had Nash'hrah killed Bethel by trickery. We don't know exactly what. And then the Fellowship came and killed Nash'hrah, right? And All-mer, before Bethel came, All-mer took over Mahab and killed all the false gods, like the new gods at the time. He killed them all. And then somehow Bethel comes along, this guy who is apparently related to All-mer, and we don't know exactly when he started. We don't know exactly when his library was built, but we know that All-mer rebuilt Mahab because that was part of his project. So then you've got this new god who is explicitly interested in the old gods, just happens to be the very first new god after All-mer takes over. And he's apparently related to him somehow, right? So you can see how these theories sort of come about, right? And so the next step, of course, is that, well, Bethel was a new god before All-mer came over. He gave birth to All-mer, created this perfect human to take over, and set up a plot to kill the rest of the new gods and take over and reform their religion into an old god-centric religion, right? Oh, that's a crazy theory, but you can see how he got there, right? Oh, that's a pretty insane theory, isn't it? But it makes sense, doesn't it? And I also know how Bethel died. You can prove that too with crazy theories like this. But I'll save that. I'll save that one for later. Oh, whoops, zoomed in. Yeah, and look, here's the other statue of Bethel. He looks even more like a marriage here, and the whole is emphasized here. So, like how the God of the Depths still technically exists after dying, as shown by the post, but because of Gofar took a chunk of its attributes and abilities, ended up being reborn. That's what it seems to be, yes. Percolate has some serious theories going. I got drunk the other day and was just reading through his cut dialogue like, yes, you're so right, Queen. Something weaker, and for those who are really lost in the dark and forgotten by the world as well. Yeah, so the traces of the depths are really interesting. Yeah. Like how Vinushka was technically killed, but still exists in a different form. Vinushka's really interesting and actually ties back into Bethel, but I'm going to do that in a video soon. So after this one I'm working on, so after this next video I'm working on about the Yellow King, I'm going to be doing a video about this theory. This is the heart of the video. The video is about quite a few things, actually. It's a bit of a collection, a bit of a miscellaneous one, sort of like the Pocket Cat video. But it goes into All-mer's birth, his father, his likely father. This is all theories, of course. Vinushka, and the war in Mahab. So, that's why the All-mer religion seems to be competing with the old god. No, it's the same thing. All-mer worship is old god worship, but in pre-Hevel, or as one girl says, pre-Hevel, it's different. It's not All-mer worship, it's sulfur worship. It's different again. Oh, I've got a hell of a theory for that one, I tell you that much. Oh man, it's 4D chess. I kinda want to say it now, but it's a long one. And I want to save it for the video. It's a banger. I think it's a real banger. Why? But you've hit it right on the head there. You've hit it right on the head, Smugrioko. Why the apparent inheritor of the All-mer religion seems to be at odds with old god worship. In fact, that's something I didn't even think about adding into the video. So I'm gonna write that down. Thank you for that. I could spell worship. Solfmere. Okay. Hey, Aluk, how you doing? Good to see you again. Always thought that hole was head-shaped or something referencing Nash'hrah for killing Bethel. Oh, that'd be funny. Think that drug thing's gonna get read out loud? Hey, Blue, how you doing? Pre-Hevel. Do I think old gods can be killed in the first place? Their concept second form. It says humans thinking Vinushka was killed. It's complicated. Anyway, that was a big divergence from where we were going. Yes, everything is written from someone's perspective, and you can usually assume it's correct as far as humans know, unless it's explicitly stated otherwise elsewhere. And usually it's not the case. Honestly, if you have any questions, just pop into the official Discord and ask in their lore chat. They're pretty friendly in there. Okay. Studies of Sylvian 1 and Skin Bible of All-mer imply Sylvian created us according to her own image, but that is human written knowledge. As such, the idea of who came first is a literal question, frequently debated by various humans within the actual lore of the game. For instance, Lagarde directly questions this. Did Sylvan truly create us, or were we the ones who materialized her physical form according to our image? That's right, I forgot about that dialogue. That's interesting dialogue. I'm actually remembering bits here. This is good. So Lagarde says, I found something. They say Sylvian created us according to her own image, but what if there was a god only in abstract? Yo, Davis, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I can heart it and I can like it. There we go. Thank you very much, Davis. I really appreciate it. What if there is only a god in abstract, whom we have made physical according to our own image? That would reverse our roles, essentially. Or is there a god at all? This basically follows directly onto the Yellow Mage philosophy that Osar talks about, how he says that the old gods aren't gods as we think they are. So, very Warhammer coded that we make gods and deny gods from the power of human beliefs. It is similar to how that works. How belief and the gods are tightly entwined. Before I go on another 10-minute rant, we'll keep reading this. But yes, it is similar. Yes, there are definitely some notes that are shared between them. So, where are we? And in Father Hugo's God Manifesto, the best book in the series, by the way, seconded. Upvote that, Reddit gold, guild that post. He also directly questions this as well. The idea of what spawned in first, the physical forms or the concept our consciousness gave birth to. So again, specifically, that's Grogoroth is the god of destruction. He is destruction. Grogoroth is destruction. He is the idea of things dying, breaking apart, that sort of thing, right? But he also has a physical form. So, which came first? Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Ugh. Hang on, I need to blow my nose. Just give me 1 sec. All right. Golly. Ugh. So here's one of the very important questions to ask and answer in the simple Google Doc. Was it truly our human view of the concepts that shape the older gods' physical appearance, aka their traces/cells? Shells. Good question. And that's all these theories come down to. Every single one of my videos has been from a simple theory. What's the deal? Often my bigger videos often come from bigger questions. Like my logic video came from the question, what's the deal with logic? What's the deal with sulfur? That sort of stuff. But sometimes it's just a core idea. And like my Pocket Cat video was like, okay, what's the deal with Pocket Cat? And that one ended up being a bit more eclectic because to understand Pocket Cat, you've got to, according to my theories, you've got to understand rare, you've got to understand this and that and what have you. So, and it became more of a theory of how these ideas work, actually. And this that Pocket Cat video might tie in with this, so we'll see. So, what I'm trying to picture this is basically how we view concepts like Mother Nature. Stop putting Pocket Cat jump scares on the screen. Binge watching your Fear and Hunger 2 playthrough, loving it so far. Just got to episode 6. Oh, awesome! I'm glad. Well, hopefully we'll have some more streams. Well, I thought the update was going to come out when I made my my sulfur video, Mythonics. What is it? Sulfur God. Yeah, this one. So I rushed this video because I thought the update was coming out. And that was April, 2 years ago. 2 years ago and 1 month. Yeah, so that's funny. Where are we? Yep. So yes, we'll have to rush this next video in case it comes out in case the update comes out first. What if the gods originated as conscious concepts within their powers, then used it to give themselves true physical forms with, it could be. So we're gonna find out who the weirdo who wants the joy mask in the god. Yeah, I don't know if we're ever getting that answer, to be honest. Where did the time go now? Good question. Essentially the same as Berserk, how the icon of evil is the embodiment of human need for purpose taken shape, is the living embodiment of suffering justifying existence. Interesting. Okay. Grogoroth ending B talk. This one's great. Let's look what Grogoroth directly tells us in ending B. Since he's literally one of the older gods, he's a primary source. He tells us what the older gods are. He speaks in caps lock, get used to it. I am nothing but a shell, a fraction of the traces that is left of Grogoroth. The older gods, they do not even exist in this world anymore. The older gods are too pure for this world. They are the true forms of the feelings and ideas that linger in men. But humans, they are too tainted by their own mind and ambition to understand purity. Think of the perfect shape of fear and destruction. Now take a look at the world you delve. Do you see that shape? A shape could never exist among men, because the shape varies between every human. If you could truly see the shape everyone shares, it would shatter the individual mind and existence. Humans are weak. I can reveal the true form, glimpses of it. The old god's true forms are abstract and conceptual. Grogroth's true form is literally destruction, and the traces are the physical shell left behind. This appears to directly link back to what Lagarde speculated on. They are too pure for this world, too abstract and conceptual, and the human view of the shape of destruction varied too much, and as such, they left. They left whether out of their own volition or were forcibly pushed out. Which I think is the same thing, but we'll get to that. But is Lagarde really right about this idea? The idea that the traces are indeed shaped according to our own image, a human image. If we want an answer to this, then perhaps by investigating the physical designs of the old gods, we can get our answer. For instance, if their designs would make the most sense in a way that fits a more human view, in other words, a more mythological way, then perhaps the physical forms they truly were shaped according to our own image after all, as opposed to something that isn't a more human view, such as a scientific way. However, looking at one specific line, a fraction of the traces, what does it mean in context to what Grogroth says about his origins? He isn't just a trace, but a fraction of the traces, multiple traces. So there's two ways to take that, right? A fraction of the traces means that this trace we see here in the top right corner, which I'm kind of blocking. Can we just scooch that over? You see it. You know what it is, right? You know what it is, this one. You've seen it before, guys. So what it's saying, here's a fraction of the traces, right? Which means that there are more traces other than this, right? Makes sense. This is only part of the traces. That could mean multiple things, right? It could mean that there are more traces roaming around. It could also mean that the traces have faded over time. I personally take that view, that the traces have faded over time. Why do I keep shaking around like that? But we'll see. We shall see. Sense of a shape implies semi-physicality from what can be perceived. Exactly, yes. Yo, Alu, really good to see you again. Your videos, including your live streams that you've done in the past, have been a help. Life's been really tough for me this past month. They're kind of strange, but your videos achieve me. Oh, I'm glad, Alu. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I'm glad if my videos can help you out in any way. You sickos watching crazy horror things about people getting murdered and, well, you know what happens in Fear and Hunger. No. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I can entertain you guys and help you guys out a little bit. So, would traces be similar to the multiple selections of Christ, i.e., Catholic versus Jewish? No. So there isn't really an equivalent, as far as I'm aware, in other religions. So this seems to be a concept that's fairly unique in the game. So a trace. So right, you've got a god, right? You've got a god. It lives in the green hue, and it's an idea. It's a perfect concept, right? It's a perfect concept of destruction. When he's in reality, he comes down to reality, and he's got the physical form, and that is the god as well. So that is similar to Christ. Christ being God, the Catholic God, Christian God rather. And Jesus and God are the same thing. But Jesus has a physical form. You might even say he is a physical form. Not quite, but you know what I mean. So the physical form is integral to Jesus, basically, is what I'm saying. If God left, right? So you've got God and you've got Jesus. If God left and Jesus stayed, obviously that's obviously not how it works, but theoretically, right? And Jesus stayed, then Jesus would be the trace, right? So he still has a link to divinity, but he's still roaming around there. He isn't the full divinity. He isn't the true God, right? It's kind of difficult to explain, and it doesn't quite match on to Christianity, but you know that's sort of how you might explain it, right? A way some people explain it is that if you imagine reality as a pond and you get a stick and the stick is the god, and you jam it into a pond and the ripples come out, and then you pull the stick out and the ripples are the trace. So if all gods are concepts, living stories, much stronger and older ones with very strong bases like nature and creation, things everyone believe in. Yes, so it does seem to be the more people believe in a certain thing, the stronger it is, the trace is. So. And gods, when they have a connection to the green hue, are very, very strong. But then when they leave, their trace relies on belief. But that gives you a hint about what the green hue is, doesn't it? Seems similar to the concept of emanations in Platonism. Yes, it is very similar to Platonism. Very similar. Yes. Okay. This is a theory about a fact that Miro confirmed in an official thesis he made about the first game. You can find it on page 31. The clues are not present in the game, as well, such as how the new gods directly confirm that an older god trace, not specified, and how both traces have two larger horns, two smaller spiky horns. What is this? Let's see. Yes. So Miro made Fear and Hunger as part of a university thing. Good lord, why is PDF reader so bad? I can't read this. It's written in some sort of nonsense language. No, it's written in Finnish. We'll have to check that out later. Okay. Let's see. Recalling back to what Grogroth said, I am nothing but a shell, a fraction of the traces that is left of Grothoroth. Keyword here, fraction. He isn't a trace, but a fraction of the traces, which could be implying there are multiple traces of Grothoroth, and we see that to be 100% true. After all, that's good and all, but why are there multiple traces in the first place? Grothoroth's just destruction. What's the deal with that? Why are the designs quite different? So, can we actually... You can kind of see it on the right there. Let me just make it a bit bigger so you can see. So we have multiple appearances of Grothoroth. So you can see 4 or 3 in the game here, right? So the one in the book there looks really similar to how we actually fight him. I think it's a little different, but it's basically the same thing, right? And then you've got the one that Nash'hrah makes spawn. And then you've also got this one on the top right there. That might be the same thing, might just be a stylized drawing error, right? Can I... Okay. Have you seen the shadow of Axolotl's take on All-mer's sulfur? Kind of blew my mind. I did. I don't recall it off the top of my head, though. I said it earlier, we want to answer Lagarde's theory. Then let's investigate the traces, what we already know. It makes sense. It can be explained in a way according to our own image. Creation and destruction aren't necessarily just gendered concepts, right? Yet we see their physical forms bearing such traits. Ooh, excuse me. So yeah, Grothoroth depictions almost always have peepee horns, or a Sylvian usually always has many breasts. That's true. Destruction and creation are just concepts that aren't gender, good or evil, they just exist, right? They're forces of nature, yet look at their physical forms. Specifically, the moon has... Hang on. This particular view has gotten so widely popular that almost all occultists believe that Vinushka is the offspring of Grothoroth and Sylvian. However, wouldn't that just be considered as human written knowledge? Who's to say that's actually the truth, instead of something that was considered the popular belief? Scientifically, the moon is just some rock in space orbiting Earth, yet his traces show him with those ophonym rings, and the many eyes representing his ever-watching nature at night, something that is hiding in plain sight, even though the actual moon doesn't really do that, right? When was this written? Oh, that's pretty recent. Look, so there's this thing, right, where loreheads want to be the one that is known for pioneering a theory, but I'm pretty sure I was the one who pioneered. I try not to do it, but sometimes I can't help myself. I'm pretty sure I was the one who pioneered the theory that rare was the ever watching one. That we see in the first game too, because we see there's the ever watching talisman, and he's like an Eastern god. Maybe, I don't know, probably not. You don't want to be too stuck on that, because someone will dig up an old Discord tweet and say, no, you actually got pipped by that by like years on it. It's like, oh, okay, so I came up with the theory without recognizing that anybody else had done it first. Basically, what I'm saying. And he's actually good. His ever watching nature is actually good, because he heals your mental afflictions. So, even an implied equal dualism between the sun and the moon through order and chaos, as seen in the Truth Under the Moonlight text. But in reality, the moon is significantly smaller than the sun, and there are many moons in the solar system alone. It makes no sense scientifically. As such, it appears as if the views of the shape of destruction, creation, moon, and sun appear to be more mythological and more human. Yes. No arguments there. We got more Hugos. Let's go. Death of an older god Vinushka, the change in the human view of nature. As stated in the unedited skin Bible of Vinushka, he used to be named Nanush, but is now Vinushka, meaning guilt, due to humans killing nature. Axolotl video followed the idea of All-mer and sulfur representing Jung's ego and shadow, etc. Yes, no, I do remember that vaguely. I'll need to go back and rewatch it because it's been a minute. I remember liking it though. Human view on nature is now something for them to capitalize on as resources. They took from nature due to being tainted by their mind and ambition to triumph over others. Yes, yes, yes. Does it say the theory? You know why? You know what the difference there is? You know what god Vinushka is opposed to then? This is 100% right? The human view on nature is now something for them to capitalize on resources, right? So you go from Vinushka being this god who represents nature, and humans have a place in nature, right? They are beholden to the seasons. They are beholden to the nice breeze. They're beholden to the rains, to the fire, the brush fires and volcanoes and everything else like that, right? But then humans killed Vinushka or Nanush and then renamed them Vinushka because they realized they kind of fucked up. But what was that replaced with? You guys know? What was the human view of nature replaced with? I'm gonna have a sip. What do you guys think about it? Oh, my throat's getting sore. I don't think we'll play games after this. It was replaced with a human dominance of the world. And what god represents human dominance? It's All-mer. Right? So All-mer was the one. That's why I'm starting to think that Vinushka and All-mer had a lot more to do with each other than people think they did. So, would you say the old gods are like the perfect forms of Plato, while traces are imperfect manifestations of this form in the material world? Yes, exactly. That's a very good way of looking at it. If you know Plato, then it's incredibly similar. And to the fact where I wouldn't be surprised if Miro was inspired by Plato specifically for it. So yes, as Enki describes, ancient tribes and men used to live in symbiosis with nature with its cycles of destruction and creation. This effectively caused the death of the Nanush, in a more conceptual idea, the death of nature itself. And what manifested as a result was a guilt of humans for killing nature in the form of totems, aka half-gods known as ikitorsos, presumably manifestations of that guilt. So in a way it appears as if the human view of the shape of nature directly affected the concept of man, but this can be directly linked back to the previous ideas proposed of how the physical forms, traces, shells appeared. Hang on, I'm going to be right back 1 second. All right. Where were we? And it appears the human view on the shape of nature can directly affect the concept of nature. This can be directly linked back to the previous ideas proposed of how the physical forms traces shell appear to be shaped according to the human view of that shape. But there is a difference. Instead of being viewed with ideas that aren't directly harmful to the concept, hang on. Instead of being viewed with ideas that aren't directly harmful to the concept, such as how Grogroth and Sylvan have assigned gender roles, hang on, my brain is breaking here. There is a difference. Instead of being viewed with ideas that aren't inherently harmful to the concept, such as how Grogroth and Sylvian had assigned gender roles, which are humans' attempt at comprehending such concepts, the view of nature humans had completely flipped directions in a negative, unsustainable way. Though this does raise a question. If this is true, why do they still have influence today? Yes, that is a really good question, right? So what that's saying is that, okay, so assuming that humans' view of destruction is that it's male and masculine, right? So we view Grogroth as male. And humans' view of love and life is feminine, so we view Sylvian in a feminine way, right? If we viewed nature as something that we were part of and beholden to, so with Vinushka, it was this god that we actually had to be beholden to and was like meditative and whatnot. What happens when our view completely changes on that god? What happens then? Well, I think what happens is that god becomes a prime target for Ascension. That's what happened with the depths, right? Is that, so the depths was a god that represented the unknown, being a thing of fear and hunger. You know, it's bad. You know, the unknown was bad. And what the girl did was reshape that darkness into something good that can fuel humanity going forward, right? So the unknown was no longer something, well, it was something to be feared and to be scared of, but instead of it being a destructive force and a transforming force, it was fuel for exploration and innovation, right? So we looked at the things we didn't know, and instead of being scared of them, we were like, hey, I want to know that, right? So that's why the god of fear and hunger is also a representation of the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment rather, because we were taking the darkness and shining light on it, and that's what she represents, is humans changing their mindset to do that. So what happens to a god of nature when humans decide that it's something that, instead of being beholden to it, they want to dominate? Just think about that. It's kind of funny that this came out, because this is all really similar to ideas that I'm going to be covering in my next lore video. God symbols, a mythological view. Grogroth's symbol is the eclipse, as shown by the eclipse talisman bearing the sigil. In real life, the eclipse has been seen the bad omen, sign of imminent destruction. Even animals start to react with some anxiety during one. It does seem quite fitting for a god of destruction, but does that really make much sense? Tell me they face the fear and build the future. Yeah, exactly. Eclipse doesn't actually cause destruction or warn us about oncoming danger. It's literally just the moon covering the sun, right? As for Sylvian's god sigil, it's a vulva. Yes, it is. And it's an eye as well, remember? Don't forget that. It's an eye. Which can be linked with fertility, a gendered thing as well. Creation isn't simply to do with her fertility, yet it's a god's sigil. I said before, destruction and creation isn't simply a gendered thing, but many other things as well. Now here's a really interesting one. Depth's god's sigil is literally just a reverse Raido rune, a Futhark rune. A human-made rune, which in a mythological context makes great sense for representing depths. It relates to indecision relating to travel, the feeling of being lost. But does it make any sense for the actual god of the depths to choose a human-made symbol? So if this symbol represents the feeling of being lost, so if that's what the depths sort of feels like, being lost in the darkness, the god of fear and hunger is people wanting to be lost in the darkness so they can find their way through. That's what that means, right? I never thought to equate god of fear and hunger with human enlightenment. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's an old theory that goes around. because it's around that same time period. Does some of these sigils make sense for other intelligent creatures like listmen who had become new gods and worshipped older gods? Would they have the same view as a human perspective? Most likely not, especially with the depths god sigil. Perhaps this is because the god sigils appear to be in line with a more mythological view, a human perspective. Recalling back to the theory that the physical forms / traces of the older gods are shaped with the human view of the shape, perhaps this idea applies to god sigils as well. Yes, I would 100% believe that, especially since Sylvian's sigil changes over time. And Rare has multiple sigils. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was just how humans interacted with them. And you can see that too in the ritual circles as well. Can we pull that up? Jamie, pull that shit up. So if we look at the ritual circles, do we have a big picture of them? Yeah. So, ritual circle for the old gods, ritual circle for the new gods, ritual circle for the ascended gods. We didn't need a ritual circle for the ascended gods in the first game. All-mer was literally just called an old god. He was All-mer, the ascended one. The category didn't exist. So how these work is it's literally just how humans interact with this magic. That's it. Red technically has another sigil. I don't know if it's like a sigil, but there's another symbol that represents him. Skin Bible Rare. Can we see it? Boop, 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 boop. Yeah. So this one here. If it's going to load, there we go. That one there is another symbol for Rare. I shouldn't have said sigil, right? Can we see the other ones? Skin Bible, Go Far. Because all the other ones, I'm pretty sure, just straight up show their sigil there. So most of them show their sigil there, but then Rare's only has this one for some reason. You know? And I believe Miro straight up said that, yeah, he should have used that as a sigil. Because he likes it more. So I was wondering, I know he was other symbols like the crescent moon and the five-pointed star. Yeah, he's got some other sigils as well. So, okay, where are we? Do some of these sigils make sense? Oh no, we read that. Okay, where were we? Basis of magic. Here we go. The spell descriptions of Grogroth spells give details how they function. Hurting. Create a devastating vortex out of your concentrated feelings of hurting and hatred. Black smog. Crystallized man-made darkness born from the industrial age to blind and suffocate your opponents. Black orb. Concentrated negative energy that can be hurled at your opponent. It's got ill will. Okay. Why do they care then? Why care about which circle their sigil is placed? It's because you care. And I have a feeling I'll talk about this now. But in general, it's not about aligning the universe how you want. It's about aligning yourself with the universe. That's generally how modern magic is viewed. So. And that seems to be what's happening in the games as well. You're basically tricking yourself into thinking that you're more like Grogroth, so you get Grogroth magic. So, clearly some of Grogroth's magic... Oh, wait. Moon Eye situation is interesting. Good chance Rare may not have had a reason to have the current sigil until self-occultist needed one to easily access his realm. Maybe. We do know that the church knows his sigil, though, because Marina knows his sigil, and she can learn it in school. Clearly some of Grogroth's magic channels negative emotions to carry destruction magic, but destruction isn't inherently evil, good, positive, or negative. Skin Bible calls out how viewing destruction as something evil is a foolish thought. It's very strange. Perhaps the domains and such spells of older gods themselves may also be from our own image as well. For some domains it makes sense, like plants for Vinushka. Lunar meteorite storm for Rare fits, but the mind-related abilities for the moon. This is some rock in space, right? Isar delves more into the way magic works. The forces you call older gods, they are just that, forces of nature. A blacksmith doesn't pray for Vinushka to bend his iron, he harnesses the flame and does it himself. According to a conversation at the train with Isar, when you ask how magic works, he talks about how it all comes down to willpower. However, you need blind, unconditional faith in yourself. Religion is a way to bypass this by having that blind, unconditional faith towards higher powers instead, so you create these simple tricks by manipulating the world known as magic. So it appears that if the way Grogroth spells hurting, black smog, black orb appear to align with his very idea that Osar explains, you are using your own negative feelings to manipulate the magic itself, not Grogroth's. You are the one who bends the forces of nature to your own will. Yeah, so basically what you're saying is that I am Grogroth, I am a force of destruction, and you're tricking yourself into doing it. You know? That seems to be the way it works. Okay, next one. Sorry, 1 second. The girl merged with the god of the depths or simply becomes an avatar or vessel in the world when she ascended. That's a very complex idea. She changed the way humans... So, in Fear and Hunger, metaphor and historical events are the same thing, right? So nature dying, man taking over the world, and Vinushka dying are the same thing. They're a metaphorical event and a literal event. The girl represents mankind's change towards that mindset. So that was happening already, and she just cemented it. She was the physical manifestation of that idea coming to fruition. And she reached up to the idea that was the depths, said, no, that's mine. And I'm going to change that to a more human orientation. It seems that everything that she didn't want, so the depths affinity for insects, for example, she didn't want that. So the depths, the traces of the depths can have that. But all the good, juicy parts she did want, she kept and changed and reoriented for the humans. So, yes, it's kind of not like his avatar, but... And not really his vessel, but she changed the idea of the god of the depths. So, it's a few hundred years, according to Percolate, but who knows how long they've been operating in Rare's domain. Lizardmen also have weird self-like situation going. Yeah, we know so very little about the Lizardmen and the cult of sulfur. It's really hard to get a good timeline for them. Torment 1 has his signature move, Chains of Torment, but according to the icon, it is classified under Grogroth magic. And in Termina, it is not only is it next to the Grogroth skill tree, but you need to first unlock Black Orb before you learn it. So it appears as if he used Grogroth magic as a basis for his own custom spell. It does make sense, though, as a spell description of other Grogroth spells, such as blah blah blah, use negative emotions and concepts to channel. Also relates back to what Osar says. He may have blind conditional faith in himself to create his own spell out of his own negative feelings of torment associated with the chains, bending Grogroth magic in particular to his own will in his own unique way. Yeah, we get the idea. Commenting about how sulfur during the stream feels like a doodling in class when I should be paying attention to the document. Machine God Logic Artificial Green here. Here we go. So it appears as if Lagarde may be right after all. The idea that the traces are shaped by our own image, or in Grogroth's words, our view of the shape. However, I wouldn't necessarily say that he's 100% right, but instead 95% right. For example, what about lizardmen, circles, or even ratkin? They also have their own unique views of the shapes, right? Wouldn't they have contributed to the shapes like creation, destruction, etc.? For example, Sylvian's traces look like a squid with many tentacles. Perhaps it's a lizardman view of creation. Regardless, that might be why we have the different... that might be why we have the different... Vinushka, right? Can we see that? So we've got the unedited Vinushka and we have the later Vinushka. That may have been the lizardman view of Vinushka. And then we have, the living one. But you know what the really, really, really interesting thing is here? This might be Vinushka as it's dead, right? It's a pine cone that's opened and released its seeds. Holy shit, I'm writing that down. That's awesome. Dead Vinushka is an open pine cone that has released its seeds. That's 100% showing up in the next video, by the way. Playable Lizard Man character win. That'd be sick. I think they're all dead by now, though. Funga X Jurassic Park crossover. Yeah. Regardless, it appears as if Lagarde applied this very idea to the machine god logic, creation of a new god not relying upon other powers, but something made by humans purely for humans. One such thing would be the artificial green hue, which he refers to as a stream of consciousness. Note that Hugo refers to how old gods spawned from the green stream, aka the green hue. So in other words, the natural green hue could be considered as such. You could say that, applying this theory, the regular green hue / stream of consciousness collects the information from the consciousness of sapient species like humans, spawns in these physical manifestations of the old gods, materializing them according to our own image. Yes. Satisfied with that? Logic aims to solve the issue Grogoroth states in ending B about how the shape between every human varies. Logic collects information from all the humans about varying views on the shape, and only humans, not lizardmen, ratkin, etc., from their consciousness using teleelectroscopes, and calculates what the shape is meant to be instead for us. That's a really interesting theory, and I really like that. I actually really like that. Please find a way to connect this to a pig statue. Could I find the course of Vinushka, stick some sticks into it, make a pinecone pig? You could, yeah. No longer will the shape need to vary between every human if logic does the job, coming to a consensus on the collective consciousness. As such, no reliance on the older gods and the green hue / stream of consciousness. Okay, that's really interesting. And that makes a lot of sense. And I'm mad I didn't come up with that when I did my logic video. I'm really mad. This is officially co-signed now, by the way. Officially co-signed by More They Do. You can write that down if you want. If the Ratman survived, Lizardman should be fine, then exploring Lizardman civilization would be very interesting. Well, we know that most of them were wiped out, and only the stragglers have survived by the grace of the God of the Depths. So it makes sense that the God of Fear and Hunger has her own ratkin if the God of the Depths had the Lizardman. In comparison, the Ascended Gods weren't perfect, as the human view of Ascended Gods varied as well. For instance, the view of what All-mer is had essentially watered down in a way that was less barbaric. For instance, sacrificing people on All-mer crucifixes started to die out over 200 years ago, according to Osam. As for Gopher, people weren't even acknowledging her as a true god, but as some obscure deity. Instead, it appears as if it's mostly ratkin worshipping her nowadays. So, the issue with All-mer is that... Oops, sorry, I bumped you guys. The issue with All-mer is that we don't know for certain if people were worshipping All-mer or if they were worshipping Sulfur. Because All-mer is dead. We know All-mer is dead, that's a fact, right? Did he as a god stick around, or have we been worshipping Sulfur? So, I think that's really hard to say. And with the girl, then All-mer crucifixes started to die out over 200 years ago. Okay, I need to write that down too. All-mer crucifixes started to die out about 200 years ago. If that truly was sulfur worship, why did it die out? Question mark. Okay. I have fever dreams about Pinecone Pig being a somewhat powerful deity akin to Vitruvia or Sylvian. And the girl, does she get power by being worshipped, or is she, because she represents that stage of enlightenment, does she get power just from humans doing cool shit, you know, being industrious, right? What counts as believing in the God of Fear and Hunger? Does it, because if people believe in what she represents, right, then, so if they believe in that enlightenment and industriousness, then would she need to be a true god, is the thing, right? So does Grogoroth need to be considered a real god in order to have that trace? Yes. because that's how we view it, right? So if we view Grogroth as this big, angry demon man with big penis horns, then that's how he'll appear. So we need to conceptualize the Enlightenment as a thing in order for her to appear as a thing. But if we don't do that, she will still exist, but her traces would be weak or non-existent. Or her traces will just appear like the rat men think she appears. Okay, yeah, that checks out. That checks out. Okay. Theory on why there are multiple traces of the same older god. I have an interesting theory about this too, but we'll have a look-see. What if the different physical forms, traces of the same older god, represent the different popular views of the same shape that an older god represents? This would essentially be combining both Lagarde's theory on the physical forms of the elder gods as well as what Grogroth says. Because the shape varies between every human. What if the different traces of the same older gods, such as for Grogroth, are the direct consequence of that? It's time to believe more the older gods are just ascended blights. Vinushka maybe, I don't know about the rest. Same process that All-mer and the little girl went through, but for blights, they're an older generation to ascended gods. I think the issue with that is there's like no evidence of it, right? I think that's where we get to the stage in theory where it's like, is it possible? Yes. Is there evidence? No, right? Maybe the same as the old gods getting power from inherent human truths, like humans experiencing fear and hunger to fuel their existence, which fuels those concepts in turn. Maybe. So curious about the blights in general, no so little as... Yeah, we do. So, well, let's just read this one. So, what if the differences between the traits of the same older gods, such as Grogroth, are direct consequences of that? Now, if it was just a small amount of humans having a same view of destruction in a unique way, that's nothing, right? Perhaps several different smaller views can be shown on a single trace. The gauntlet version of Grogroth appears to have multiple design elements to it related to destruction. For instance, some kind of carrion bird necklace or the demonic wings, giant claws, bandaged face, etc. But as stated earlier, a significant amount of people believe in the idea of destruction as evil, or something inherently masculine/gendered, or maybe even seeing destruction as just a force of nature. Perhaps it's the idea that the different views of the same shape of an older god become distinct enough and big enough from each other and form multiple physical traces of the same older god. Perhaps one trace could represent evil, and another trace being more masculine, etc. This can help explain why the older gods left in the first place. Getting diluted into multiple physical forms doesn't sound fun. Instead of being your true form, this sounds a lot more disastrous to an older god. Yes, that does make sense, actually. Okay, so one thing I did want to... we'll go through this, and I'll say my theory about this trace. Maybe it mentions it here. Honestly, in terms of interpretation that's based solely on appearance, it's a mixed bag of concepts. So this is the gauntlet version. Can we see that? I might just move myself out of the way a bit. Why am I so wobbly? What is going on? Where's my chat box? Here it is. Let's move you guys out of the way a little bit. Oh, we'll shrink you down a bit. There we go. Let's see. Where were we? Design elements. Had a carrion bird necklace, hands being claws, demonic wings, bandaged face, also many eyes. Design comes off as quite a demonic in a way, very inhuman. Considering Nash'hrah was able to get to the darkness version bent to his own will, perhaps one shot by the gauntlet version, it appears as though they are vastly different in strength. Perhaps this could indicate the idea that this trace is more popular view of the shape of destruction. Furthermore, the gauntlet version can literally speak to us, while the darkness version is but a mindless beast. He even uses a move called Whispers of Grogroth. Version of Grogroth also uses fire magic, how Nash'hrah gets burnt to a crisp. Ice squirt molten. Cast a burning gaze. Fire's not really a gender thing, it's just a force of nature. Really interesting how it doesn't use moves like hurting or black orb. Okay. Darkness version of Grogroth, the peepee horns are far more detailed and pronounced compared to the gauntlet version. Has nails on its hands instead of claws, like a giant beard, ugly beast looking face. It's more of a mindless beast. No, this is interesting. I have an alternate theory on this, but we'll just read it. Ugly beastly face, looks like more like a mindless beast. Destruction isn't simply a masculine beastly thing, but Grogroth. And Grogroth's domain holding blood magic isn't far inherently masculine beastly either, but it is something that people relate with destruction, hence their view of the same shape. So perhaps the darkness version of the trace of Grogroth is a representation of the masculine/beastly view. Destruction isn't really a gendered concept. So as I conclude, what I think this interpretation of Grogroth is, I believe that the Gauntlet version, so this lower version here, this is the one we find in the Gauntlet, represents destruction as a force of nature, the view of destruction that is not good or bad, it just exists. Whereas this top one represents it as more beastly or masculine. Now, that's an interesting interpretation, and it might be right, but what I think is something a little similar. Multiple traces series is the main reason I share this. Love to hear you taking it. So, I don't know if I believe in multiple traces of the god, not in that sense. So if we consider a trace as the leftover remains of a god, right? So if we consider this trace here, so this was literally the shell of Grogroth when he left. So this was a shell filled with the essence of Grogroth, right? And now the spirit of Grogroth has left, and just this empty shell has remained there. This thing, consider what it is and who has it, right? So it is something that appears like Grogroth. It has massive pee-pee horns. It's got a beard. And it's a slave to Nash'hrah. All right. All right. If we can pull this up. Jamie, pull Nash'hrah up. Is there a better picture of that? Where is he? Lost him. So you've got this thing with a beard, right? What does Nash'hrah want? He wants to defeat the god of destruction and become the god of destruction, basically, is what he wants to do, and he thinks he can do it. So I have a theory about living stories, right? And I don't know if it mentions it in here, probably not. But my theory is that once enough people believe in a thing, it can become a story. And the reason I call it living stories is because the prime example of that is Pocket Cat, who comes from a book and is a living entity. There's also the Crowmore, who started from stories. The Skin Granny started from stories and is a living entity. And Ronteals are similar as well. What I think this is a living story that Nash'hrah is telling himself. He fervently believes, because he's crazy, that he can become the god of destruction, that he can become stronger than it. So you've got this idea of himself being a god of destruction, hence the emphasis on the beard and the penis, because Nash'hrah was a rapist. Was he? He threatens you with it a lot, but he can't do it. So it's implied that he is, right? And he also views himself as better than the god of destruction. So this one is his slave. It does what he wants it to do, right? So that's what I think happened, is that he believed so hard and for so long in the idea that he could dominate the god of destruction that he created this entity that is a dominated god of destruction. And it's very strong. It's extremely strong because Nash'hrah is extremely strong. He has very strong will, and he's a new god, right? So he's just straight up just very strong. But it doesn't hold a candle to the actual god of destruction because it's not the concept of destruction, right? It's just Nash'hrah's concept of destruction. So that's my take on what this is. So I don't think that it is a trace of Grogroth as in the empty shell from when the god left. I think it is what Nash'hrah believes Grogroth is. And he believed it so hard, he created it. It's wrong. We know it's wrong because he gets owned, but that's what he believes is going to happen. Now, we can see a smaller effect like this in memories? Forgotten memories. Book of Forgotten Memories. Why is the trace of Grogroth so much more powerful than the trace of Sylvian? Because, well, according to this theory, which I fairly believe, is that, well, Grogroth is about destroying things, and people believe he's way stronger than the power of joining things together. So in this book, we see it happen here in Enki's memories of his Dark Priest ancestors. These guys sacrifice children over and over and over again until a little demon, in quotation marks, appears and gives them power. And what I think they were doing was that they were trying to repeat Grogorothian sacrifices, and then a little fragment of what appears to be a little fragment of Grogoroth appeared and was like, hey, I can teach you magic. And then he teaches you... Does it say? Blood sacrifice or greater blood magic. And because they believed so hard that something would come and teach them, that something did come and teach them. But it took them a very long time because they are just humans, right? It took them generations. Whereas Nash'hrah has lived for generations and he is a new god, so he can just believe harder, right? Belief's a powerful thing, and Nash'hrah does believe in himself and his abilities. I buy it being a delusional manifestation. Clearance Sour Grogoroth. It is Clearance Sour Grogoroth, yeah. We have Grogoroth at home, and it's just Nash'hrah's darkness. That's what I believe. Could it be a mixture of the two? Could it be that... It could be that Nash'hrah managed to fishhook this trace of Grogoroth and then bend it to his will because he believed he could do it. And so the trace was like, oh yeah, you can dominate me because you believe you can. That could be possible. So both could be possible. I would lean towards one or the other, though. Okay. So speculating about possible traces that may exist. A lot of people, mainly children, believe the idea the moon is made out of cheese for centuries. What about a trace of rare that is made of cheese? What if there's a notable trace of the depths in Vinland? That's something that pops up interestingly because Vinland is so unknown and it's a land of darkness, right? So people think there might be a trace of the depths still remaining in Vinland, which is very likely, I think so. Because yeah, the very soil itself has rejected warmth and sunlight. Like I believe that if there's likely a trace there, but as humans sort of progress, you know, they might boot it out again. Oceans being uncharted territories. There's a trace of depths representing the ocean. I could believe them being the same thing, yeah. Yeah. If that multiple trace theory is correct, then yeah, I could believe that. Speculating other gods that may exist. For example, what about a sun god? There's 100% a sun god, right? What about a star god? There's almost certainly a star god as well, right? But I'm a bit hesitant to talk about the sun god and some things about the sun god and definitely the star god because we know so little and people tend to lean back onto data mine stuff and it's like, don't know about that. Let's see. Ascended gods. Applying the same theory. Here we go. As soon as you start to think the document is locked in, cheese me. No, that was great. I loved that. I love that. Girl ascends using the trace of the depths along having an ancient one's soul is set to radiate the light of an older god. As stated by the Grogoroth traces here, but a shell. So it appears that if a soul is a necessary core, according to properly fill that shell left behind the depths for the ascension to happen. Oh, interesting. Here we go. Notice how similar in concept the idea of fear and hunger is with the god of the depths. Ascended gods appear to be taking of this. As speculated earlier, the reason why there seems to be multiple traces of the same older god could be tied to what Grogoroth says about how different traces represent different view of the same shape of that concept. Here, fear and hunger is something that could be perceived as a different view to the shape of the depths, right? Yes. Considering the concepts are somewhat similar. You could say it's like depths forming another trace / physical body / shell, representing another view of the shape of the depths as concept of fear and hunger, but since the depths left the world, there's only a shell left. As such, the Ancient One's soul was necessary as a vessel to fill that shell in order to create a new concept as a god, right? Yeah, yeah. The problem with that is, one, why aren't there more ascended gods then? If they can do that with any trace. Maybe there are. Well, maybe that's what Pocket Cat does, right? If he fills his shell with someone else's soul and they become a new Pocket Cat. Huh. Psycho, my biggest interest as far as Old God goes. We know so little about them. Least of all Psycho and Turco. Yeah. Very mysterious. I'm I might not be completely right to say Gopher is another shape of the depths. I need to think about that. That's really interesting. So if you get the shell and then you put a new soul into it, and that the soul uses that as a ladder to jam itself, to short circuit the old god's soul and make a new thing. That's what I think's happening. Interesting. Let me think about that. Another thing to mention is that perhaps we can apply some of the theories of the older gods to that of ascended gods. For instance, Western mind's gone soft due to the rituals in town sacrificing All-mer crucifixes to All-mer for his protection, which is a rite that died down over 200 years ago, which proof he will still has that crucifix. Changing the human view of what the shape of All-mer is. Interesting to note that you can gain All-mer affinity through confessions as well. Gopher's design looks quite like a scarecrow, I guess. One thing to note is that there's a strong theory that the raccoons are the worshippers of Gopher, so who knows, maybe we could have a Gopher that ends up looking more like a rat. That would be funny. We assume orange is inspired by Greek philosophy. The traces and idea of a living story is the same. Humans are simply trying to conceptualize a pure form of idea in the process, manifesting an imperfect manifestation. Oh yeah, absolutely. Both Gopher and depths are distinct. Take a look at Gopher's spells. Mastery over insects to mastery over vermin, locust swarm to mischief of rats, similar, not the same. Yes, exactly. See the images, beekeepers are caused by the depths. Yes, so the depths explicitly shows up, well, influence of the depths explicitly shows up in Termina, which really is an odd thing to happen, isn't it? Leechmonger reincarnated by more depth influence. In other words, it's not like Gopher took over the domain of depths in its entirety. Instead, it appears as if the depths kept its own domains while Gopher copies it, slightly changing it to better suit fear and hunger, seeming to have her own domain. No, so what I think happened is that she took most of it, reshaped what she wanted, and then left the depths with just what she didn't want. And that seems to be insects. Because all we see of the depths is just the wasp men. That's it. That's all we see. Maybe some of the darkness in the mayor's basement, but that's super. We know basically nothing about that. And life draining magic with leeches, which are leeches are insects, right? So it's sort of really hard to know exactly, but that's what I think happened is that, sorry, my mind is blanking. Gopher just dumped all the stuff it didn't want from Gopher, and that's what the traces of the traces of the depths are, just the stuff that Gopher didn't want. Because it's interesting to note that there is no crossover between the two. There isn't any. But Gopher seems to have multiple things from depths that is slightly twisted, whereas the depths only has a couple of things. So seems to be a lot of possession of human vessels about out of places where the veil is thin. There's a pretty solid barrier between the green here. Yeah, definitely. All-mer's Ascension is split. This is something that All-mer is a unique one. Gopher is a more pure Ascension, as far as we can tell, because the girl was pure before she ascended. All-mer wasn't. Girl really said, Ascension, yes. Ew, bugs, you can keep that. Yeah, exactly. Never fought a beekeeper in any of my playthroughs. Where does it say he's explicitly a servant of the depths? So, you can see... Can you see that? So this is the... On the right here, you can see a big wasp nest in one of the apartments. and it has a symbol of the depths carved into it. And I believe on the table as well, if you interact with it, it says that there's like a backwards R or something written on there. So it's made very clear that this is... the depths did this, basically. So how did All-mer ascend? If we're going to apply previous theories, well, one theory is that he ascended just how the girl did, using the traces of an older god. The sun god is a candidate for this, considering how when the All-mer died, he stayed in Mahab 3 days, and how there's a sun in Mahab, which is now gone in present Mahab. Also appears to be some sun symbolism related to how All-mer... related to All-mer, like how Bloodsword and Longinus have sun cross on their crossguard, how the matches depict All-mer with text saying "let there be light," that was me, ding, and the skin Bible depicting All-mer on a solar monstrance, like how the church depicts him having a solar crown, the same crown that Sol Invictus, the Roman god of the sun, wears. As for the sulfur god, who is, of course, in a way, All-mer as well, the text under the sulfur sun is also used in the day to morning messages and the name of the song that plays when you speak to Percolate at the Hollow Tower. In Hugo's notes, he also says this: the sulfur sun appears in text frequently. He appears to distinguish between the sulfur sun and the Mahab sun as different things. As for All-mer's ascension, we can apply Lagarde's theory in a way. Based on what Black Taylor said, the split appears to have occurred after his ascension, where one ascended god became two. In a way, you could say that this is similar to the previous proposed theory that the old gods had multiple traces, with how they seemingly split off as well into distinct separate views of the same shape. Except in the case of All-mer, there is a separation of his conscious and subconscious, which, while both are still All-mer, they can still be considered separate enough to form two entirely new physical form shells. Now, how that happened is, I believe... So when you compare... the girl doesn't seem to have her own version of sulfur, and that's weird, right? It's not the traces of depths, because we know that if the sun god... it's probably not the traces of depths. Probably not. Because sulfur is distinct from the sun god, but depths is not distinct from the fodder that the girl used to ascend. If the traces of the depths were the girl's sulfur, they would probably have a different symbol. Probably. It could just be so long for sulfur that his symbol has changed over time. Maybe he was forgotten or what have you, but they're probably different things. But what I think happened instead was that the girl was pure. Because she was kept in the dungeon, she was kept in darkness and fear and hunger her whole life. So when she ascended, she was able to ascend from a pure state, right? And you actually corrupt her as the game goes on when you give her the doll and you give her the knife, do these acts of kindness, right? That changes the god of fear and hunger into something that cares for humans. What happened with All-mer was that he grew up to be an adult man, so he wasn't pure. He lived in the world, and he was, changed by the world he was in. So the negative emotions that he no longer wanted to represent as a god, he pushed down into his subconscious. He carved idols in his subconscious in order to get rid of them. And then when he ascended, that split off into sulfur. That's the standard view of what happened. I don't know if that's the full story, but that seems to be what Black Caleb tells us. So, don't have energy to elaborate. There's a strong connection between sulfur and the dungeons, many separate instances. Oh, 100% there is. Oh boy, is there. My theory is that Gro is generally the father of All-mer and sulfur, may be related. My theory has slightly changed now. I believe that Grogoroth was the father of Vinushka, who was then the sun god, and the sun god was the sun god. Vinushka was then killed by All-mer and used to ascend. Because the idea of a strict hierarchy in the world that Vinushka represents and humans are lower down on that hierarchy, that idea is slightly twisted by the ascension of All-mer, becomes the world has a strict hierarchy but humans are on top, right? And that's what Ascension does, is it takes an idea from the old god and it slightly twists it. The girl took the darkness as a place of fear to the darkness as a place of exploration and ingenuity. It's the same thing, but slightly different. It changes your mindset, changes how you look at it. And that's what the difference between All-mer and Vinushka are. Both of them are about worshipping the old gods, just in slightly different ways. Although I do think that All-mer did a little bit of 4D chess, and I'll talk about that in my video. I won't talk about it now. Gods aren't constrained by linear time and space. Once born, they exist forever. Now, this is an interesting thing that I haven't really grappled with before. Theory about multiple traces is correct. The All-mer corpse in the dungeon is the corpse of one of his traces, and sulfur is another trace. Maybe, but then the issue becomes, why is that trace burning in hell? People, as far as we are aware, that isn't a common belief, that All-mer is burning in hell. Nobody ever once, no common person ever once elucidates that idea. Only the sulfur cult does. So I don't know about that. If that's, I don't know if that fits into this trace theory. I think it's weird. Vinushka being the sun god is a crazy theory to spring on us, but I'm going to consider it. In the grey theory, it said Vitruvia may have given birth to All-mer using Grove's seed. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay. One particular section of the God Manifesto, best book in the series, by the way, co-signed, it states, once an older god is born, it has existed forever. A god, like a human soul, is not constrained by linear space and time. In a way, this appears to be surprisingly very true, as the void with the green hue where the older gods originate works very weirdly with time. Yes, that's true, it does. As though time has no meaning there. Even if we arrive right after Lagard enters, he says he's been there for centuries, and Ragnvaldr was also there for a long time. Yes, that's exactly it. When you go into the void, time is just completely random for each person. You're there for a couple minutes max, right? But yeah, you go up to them like, yeah, I've been here ages. The so-called past Mahab also works like this as well, where the new gods say the Mahab is a place where time and space do not follow the same rules. Perhaps it's incorrect to call this version of Mahab simply as a past Mahab, but something much more significant. In a way, true Mahab, where the sun still shines, is another plane of existence entirely. I would believe that, yeah. Ragnvaldr seems to agree in this party talk. Note how you can own, the only ways you can reach there are the beacon in the depths, passenger Mahab, or dreaming there. Yeah, I can believe that. I believe that dreams, when you sleep and you go up closer to the green hue, more to the realm of ideas, and you can access Mahab through dreaming. That explicitly says that. That's what Father Donovan, I think, did that. He accessed the Mahab through the world of dreams. Perhaps they explain both the God of the Depths and Vinushka states in Termina. Once an older god is born, it is forever. Their influence on this world persists regardless of death/traces being used for Ascension, as they now exist forever. You could say that this is why we even use their magic in the first place, as once they are born, they exist forever, unconstrained. Yeah. Hugo says, the forgotten and long dormant God of the Depths perished that night. Only an older god never truly perishes. You also explain why both the sun in true Mahab and All-mer are still physically present there, as they still exist forever in a way, despite the fact that in present Mahab both are gone. All-mer may have seemingly left our world, considering he's literally a skeleton, but in true Mahab he now exists forever. In fact, Ragnvaldr says he is still alive in this plane of existence, having incredible presence. Interesting. Well, they clearly instead in a dormant state. Applying this idea further, new gods embody the ways older gods to some extent as well, like how they embody their soul type to the point they are defined by it, like the tormented one. If the new gods are also unconstrained by linear space and time, to explain why in the Hall of the Gods they are able to answer questions in both versions of Mahab, or even about things in Termina like the Woodsman. That's true. Once a new god is born, they now forever existing in the city of the gods, Mahab, just like the older gods, explaining how the fellowship can be found in Mahab in their prime states, just like the sun in Mahab or even All-mer in the tomb. Once they retire, they now forever exist instead in the Hall of the Gods, which could be the new gods equivalent to the void, the older gods' resting place. Time has no meaning for them either as well. So the only issue with that, is it an issue? Maybe. I was going to say, well, why don't we see the fellowship in the Hall of the Gods? Well, because we don't need to, because they're still in Mahab, right? So they're still existing on that sort of tier, right? And as far as we are aware, there are no new gods born after the dungeon. Maybe Lagarde, that's up for debate. But even if he was there, he's still running around as a human, so he probably wouldn't show up in the hall anyway. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really see any contradictions. Although, the thing would be, what does it mean if a god leaves then? So maybe they only stay there, so they only stay in Mahab if they still have influence. But if they sort of leave and fade away, then they can go. Because otherwise we would see Grogoroth there, we'd see Sylvian there. We see their traces in the Void and the Gauntlet. We'd see Rare. Do we see Rare? Well, no, Rare's still floating around. Is that a contradiction? Maybe if they're still around in the world somewhere, that means they don't have to be in Mahab, right? Because they're still in sacred places, right? You know, she's in the Void. He's in the Gauntlet. They're very sacred places. What about Vinushka? Well, if Vinushka was eaten by All-mer, then Vinushka's there anyway, isn't it? Depths is there as well. Okay, yeah. Okay, so then where is the other? Where is... Well, you can't say like where are the other ones because they weren't invented yet. So by Miro. Okay, yeah, all right. I like that. This is very good. I only have minor quibbles with it. In general, yeah, I don't have any major issues with this, to be honest. You know, the only thing is the Nash'hrah thing, which is the multiple traces thing, which I'm not sold on. I could believe it, but I do lean more towards human belief making false traces of a thing. So if a true trace is what the god actually embodied when it was here, the false traces are what the people believe have different beliefs about the god. You know? I would probably say that's closer to what's happening. Otherwise, yeah, no, I really like this. This is actually a really good document. Usually when a document starts like this, it's a shitpost. And in which case, I love it. When you see this Hugo picture, you know you're in for a wild ride. And yeah, this was a wild ride, but in a good way. So kudos to who wrote this, by the way. Does it say? Am I just blind? By the Theory Ship. Majority of ideas and discoveries I have here are credit to the insightful discussions among a group of people in the room. Oh, there we go. So it's anonymous. Okay. Well, this was yeah. I'm really enjoyed that. Yeah. No major notes really, other than that thing, right? Do you guys have any other questions about it? I think I was pretty happy with that. Dream stuff goes. So every old god is a god of something. So what is All-mer and Sulfur the gods of? All-mer is a god of human domination, is what I believe. And Sulfur is the angry version of that. So, Dream stuff goes so deep. It's probably way more interconnected than what we really talk about. It's an entire other realm where humans, gods, and the entities can have the same space. So I literally just think that dreaming is when your soul goes up. Your consciousness goes to like higher up the chain. So if an old god reaches down to our world and makes its trace there, humans can reach back up. You can't see I'm moving my arms, but humans can reach back up, and that's what happens when you dream, is when your consciousness moves up. And that's also the same as enlightenment. Your consciousness, it actually says your consciousness physically moves upwards, so you look like you're looking at yourself from third person. And that's the same as dreaming, that's the same as entering Mahab. You're becoming an enlightened person. That's why you need the cube of enlightenment to get in there, right? Lagarde achieved enlightenment by meditating upon the cube of the depths. Now, what exactly that means is, who knows? But that enlightenment is what one allows to enter the city of the gods. And that's what Vinushka stands for. He is a god of enlightenment. And humans were like, no, I don't want to play your game. I want enlightenment on my own terms. So they voted for All-mer. All-mer I won't go into the theory now. But you know... Where the gods go is probably something we'll never understand. They touched the human realm, left their influence, and left to do anything. Well, so the question is, do those ideas still exist when they leave? Is there just ideas that humans can't understand because they haven't grazed us? They haven't come down and touched our reality? That's the question I have. And that might be, or when the old guys leave, do they just like, what the hell was that? Are they just done? You know? All-mer is dominance, affectionate. Sulfur is dominance, derogatory. Yes, kinda. All-mer is still dominance. All-mer will dominate you, and you will pay attention to him, or it's going to get nasty. Sulfur is like, I'm going to dominate you, and by doing that, I'm going to kill you, and you don't have any say in it. All-mer is like, listen to me, or I'll kill you, but if you do listen to me, I will protect you. Sulfur doesn't do the protecting part, you know. I just think of All-mer and Sulfur being parallels, like when other examples of opposing forces. Really as simple as an angrier version. Lots of slavery symbol. Yeah, it's interesting. It's still pretty messy, to be honest. So kind of confused as to where the gauntlet is. It's a tough one. I don't know if you can really speak of like where something is in terms of these extra layers of reality. There's something I'm still trying to figure out. I do think that the gauntlet is kind of on the edge of human perception. So, if it was a realm, it would be the things that humans are almost forgetting or are ready to forget or are ready to change their minds about. So that's why it's in the depths, and that's why the girl can go. That's why it's in quotation marks, in the depths, because that's where the girl can go and change what the depths means, because humans are already like, well, I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want with it. Oh, we can do something interesting with this. Okay, cool. That's why Grogeroth is there, because he wants to be away from that. And it's probably closer to the sulfur pits as well, because it stinks like sulfur down there. And sulfur is on the edge of the human mindset as well. Nobody remembers sulfur. Only very, very, very few people do. That's what I think. The cosmology of fear and hunger is a very tricky thing. And I think it's way more metaphorical than like... I don't know if you'd be able to draw a map, is what I mean. You know? I've tried before. Do I still have it? I've tried before and I'm not happy with it. I still have it. Oh yeah, here it is. Here was my attempt at a map. Right. So, hang on, let's move this down. So the green, so you can imagine it emanating outwards as like a sun, and the human realm as earth. And the sun god is sort of the king of enlightenment, the king of idea, the gatekeeper, the top gatekeeper between the ultimate gatekeeper between the green hue and reality. Living stories / concepts theory might come to play here. Old gods left their influence. Humans believe in them enough to bring them into existence as traces. View the whole gods who fade and get replaced by new god concepts like logic and... Yeah, it could be. I think Miro is going to leave this vague on purpose, is what I feel. I feel like we're never going to get explicit answers for this. So if you view human reality as like a globe, then Mahab is like another layer on top, and then the void is like another layer on top, very close to the green hue. And as you go further out, you end up like, it's more destruction based, because destruction is something that where things are split apart. So naturally it's further away from the green hue. And as you get closer to the green hue, that's where things join and merge together. So Sylvian is closer. Vinushka is between Grogeroth and Sylvian because it is the balance between the two. And that's where we live. Depths is like a lesser god between Grogeroth and Vinushka because it represents that edge of reality. You know, it represents the unknown where things have been destroyed, where there's potential of destruction, you know. That's what I think. I don't know. I'm not happy with this, but it's such a hard thing to really wrap your head around, you know. And like, where does Rare's realm fit in with this? Where does Rare fit in with this at all, right? You know. So, if does this even work, right? Probably not. I don't know. If multiple traces are correct, then Self will represent the hatred, violent aspect of All-mer, the guy that murdered all the rulers of the time once he resurrected. It would represent his hatred and spite for the world after his resurrection and revenge. When all the hell imagery comes from, it represents his boiling hatred. The problem with that is we're never told that people believe in hell. So we're never told that anybody believes in the sulfur pits or anything like that. Or that there's a god in there, that there's a fragment of All-mer, or All-mer is in the sulfur pits, right? If that's the problem with that theory, is that I don't think that, assuming that theory is true, the multiple traces theory is true, I don't think that applies to sulfur. I don't think that's what's going on there, because it doesn't quite fit, right? Because that would require a significant amount of people to believe that All-mer is burning in hell. And that doesn't seem to be the case. Maybe the sulfur cultists have created like a snowball, right? Where there was a bunch of sulfur cultists originally before they were touched by the sulfur god who believed that All-mer was dead and in the sulfur pits. And then it happened. And then new sulfur cultists go down there when they die and then get sent back by the trace. Maybe. But then again, we're trying to justify things based on no evidence here, so I just don't think that is the case. I think what's interesting about this is that All-mer is anything but peaceful. He was supposed to have cast off his negative traits, and he's done a piss poor job of it, right? Well, negative in relation to what, right? If All-mer wanted to make himself a god of something, right? And he wanted to. It's obvious that he wanted to protect people because a lot of his magic is about protecting people and joining people together. That's the interesting thing too. There's joining people together, feeding people, making sure they have enough. Because remember, you've got phase step, which is to help you travel around. You've got blood portal, which again is help to connect people. You've got what's it called? That one where you can create lesser transmutation, which lets you turn water into wine or create extra bread. So that's feeding people. You've got his protection rituals where you sacrifice somebody to protect a township. And you've got a sword from your own blood. So when you're attacked, so what it's saying is like when you're attacked and your blood is spilled, you can use that to defend yourself. So, compared to like Gorgoroth, he's a very human-oriented, peaceful god, really. And in order to ensure that, he had to go on a slaughter spree and kill all the new gods of his time because they would upset his rule. So, you know, Jesus said, "I am not come to bring peace but a sword." He brought a sword, right? Yeah, transmutation, that's fine. And he's a protector of humanity. You need to listen to his rules, but if you do, you are well looked after, is the idea of All-mer. But that's faded over time since he's dead, and he can't enforce his own rule for some reason. But yes. He's the sword of humanity is basically what he is. And you don't want to find yourself on the other end of it. But yes, well, let's get rid of this new cosmology nonsense. Yes, I really like this. Why is that so big? There we go. I really like this. Yeah, in general, I agreed with quite a lot of it. I hope you guys liked us taking a quick look at this. A quick look, he says, an hour and 3/4 later. But no, yeah. Very, very solid, very well thought out. You know, even my objections, I had to really think about them, right? So, yeah, no, this is... if you subscribe to this, everything written here, then you would have a very thorough understanding of the lore. even the parts we're not entirely sure about, you would still have a very thorough understanding of the lore here. So, no, this is good. Very, very, yes, extensive analysis is definitely correct. So, good job, whoever wrote this, and Theory Ship. Good job, guys. Good job. I'm giving my thumbs up. You can't see it.